Have you ever heard the name of a place that, despite never having set foot there, fills your heart with a strange sense of unease? Like just hearing someone mention it makes your mind immediately think, oh, maybe next time. Ohio has quite a few places like that. And the interesting thing is that each place is hated in its own unique way. Some make people fearful. Some make them depressed. And others cause extreme frustration in daily life. But what piques my curiosity the most is, are these places truly as bad as the rumors say? Or are they just stuck with a label they can't peel off? I am the one who will accompany you in unmasking the 10 most hated names in this land, where there are stories that will make you exclaim, wait, how could things have gotten this bad? We will travel through cities that are shrinking just to survive, places where even breathing no longer feels free, to a once wealthy suburb that is now just the rotting skeleton of a shattered dream. But keep a cool head and a precise foot on the gas pedal, because the #1 spot on this list isn't dangerous or impoverished. It's hated because of an incredibly clever secret that has turned the wallets of thousands into legal targets. We begin our journey now with a town whose glorious past is now just a somber burden called Steubenville. Top 7. Springfield, the rumor mill and the fracture of modern trust. We begin our descent into the vortex of chaos in Springfield, a city nestled peacefully between Dayton and Columbus, which just a few decades ago was still a symbol of Midwestern stability. But you know, sometimes what destroys a city isn't a storm or a simple economic crisis, but something far more toxic: the collapse of trust and the rise of the ghosts of rumors. Springfield is hated not because it's ugly, but because it has accidentally become a laboratory for the worst social tensions of our time. Imagine living in a community of about 60,000 people, where every morning you wake up to police sirens and emergency alerts on your phone as part of your breakfast menu. The hatred aimed at Springfield exploded when the city became the epicenter of fierce debates over immigration, particularly the arrival of the Haitian community. But look deeper into this abyss. The truth is that Springfield has been turned into a pawn in a massive political game that the residents themselves cannot control. People hate this place because of the constant sense of instability, where in less than a month, the city suffered 33 bomb threats targeting schools, hospitals, and government headquarters. Can you feel the fear of parents having to send their children to school surrounded by Ohio State Highway Patrol? That is no longer a normal life. It is existence in a state of constant red alert. Springfield is hated because it reminds us how fragile peace can be when faced with the power of media and malicious rumors. Locals feel exhausted, not just because the infrastructure is overwhelmed or budgets are tight, but because they feel their city has been stolen to serve shocking social media scripts. And then, when the camera lights leave, what remains of Springfield? It's neighborhoods where trust between neighbors has fractured, where suspicion creeps into every grocery store. The decay in Springfield has a very modern hue. It doesn't rust like steel. It doesn't rot like wood. It is a psychological poisoning. When you drive through Springfield today, you see a city trying to breathe amidst conflicting currents of public opinion, a place people hate because it represents a loss of control. But remember, the chaos of Springfield is still topical. At position number 6, we will go back in time to face a more deep-seated kind of hatred, a suffocation coming from the ashes of an industrial empire that once dominated the world, but is now just a crumbling ghost. Top 6, Akron, suffocation in the heart of the dead. Rubber capital. If Springfield is an acute fever, then Akron is a chronic illness lasting decades, where every breath of the city carries the smell of burning rubber and disappointment. Once dubbed the rubber capital of the world, Akron was where giants like Goodyear, Firestone, and Goodrich built kingdoms of tires and polymers, providing the backbone for the entire American auto industry. But that brilliant aura left a shadow too large, covering Akron in a hazy layer of decay when factories began to close and relocate. People hate Akron because of the suffocating feeling of living among massive ruins, where production workshops that once roared with the sound of machinery are now just gray concrete blocks, silent as graves. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to see your city being carved up piece by piece? That is the reality in Akron, where the government must spend millions of dollars every year just to demolish abandoned houses and dilapidated structures to prevent crime. The hatred for Akron comes from the lingering pain of those who once believed a job at the rubber factory would feed their families for generations, only to be betrayed by the times. About a quarter of the population here lives below the poverty line, and when you pass through the neighborhoods of West or South Akron, you see a bleak sight: pothole-ridden roads, shops boarded up with wood, and a crime rate that discourages even the most long-standing residents. People hate Akron because it represents a broken promise, an industrial city that failed to reinvent itself. Every time you drive past the old factory districts, you feel like you're walking through a maze of dead ends. Where the air is always heavy with an indescribable gloom, Akron isn't entirely dead. But it isn't truly alive either. It just sluggishly exists in a state of endless transition without ever finding a destination. The hatred here has seeped into the city's DNA, making it a place people just want to leave at the first opportunity. But don't stop yet, because if the suffocation of Akron makes it hard to breathe, position number 5 will take you to a place whose name has now become a sentence of disaster, a name the entire nation mentions with horror and disgust. Top 5, East Palestine. When a city's name becomes a disaster sentence, some cities are hated for rotting over time, but East Palestine is a painful exception where hatred and fear arrived in a single fateful night in February 2023. For that moment, it was just a peaceful small town, a tiny dot on the Ohio map that most people would never bother with. But the truth is, after the toxic chemical train derailment, the name East Palestine became a symbol of horror and broken trust. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be sitting in your living room and suddenly the sky turns pitch black like the apocalypse, accompanied by an emergency evacuation order because a deadly chemical cloud is hovering right over your head? People hate East Palestine not because of its residents, but because the name is now synonymous with vinyl chloride, with air and water pollution, and with a vague fear of chronic illnesses that might appear years from now. The decay here has a very modern and terrifying shade: toxicity. Despite millions of dollars in compensation being poured in, locals still live in a state of constant skepticism. Would you dare drink water from the tap, or let your children play on the grass knowing that tons of chemicals have seeped into the ground? The hatred for this place comes from the feeling of being betrayed by railroad corporations and the delays of regulatory agencies. Residents feel like lab rats in a large-scale environmental disaster. Every time the news mentions East Palestine, viewers don't see images of cozy homes. They only see columns of black smoke and experts in hazmat suits. It is an indelible psychological scar, turning a simple town into a place everyone wants to pass through quickly for fear of invisible things in the air. The hatred here is the hatred of a forced reality, where humans must live in anxiety instead of their inherent peace. But would you believe it? While the unease of a chemical explosion in East Palestine is still vivid, at position number 4, we come to a place where poisoning has been happening silently for decades through every breath of its people. Top 4, East Liverpool. Fear in every breath and decisions made behind closed doors. Leaving the scene of the train derailment, we enter East Liverpool, where hatred carries a bitter and lingering taste of industrial dust. If East Palestine was a sudden shock, East Liverpool is a dull ache lasting a century. Once known as the pottery capital of the world, this city traded the health of generations of residents for past economic prosperity. But when the pottery factories closed, what was left wasn't wealth, but a heavily devastated environment. People hate East Liverpool because of the feeling of being turned into a sacrifice zone for the state. The most painful point is the massive hazardous waste incinerator located right next to a residential area and just steps away from an elementary school. Can you imagine the feelings of parents knowing that every day their children go to school, they are inhaling fine dust containing heavy metals and PFAS chemicals? The hatred aimed at East Liverpool comes from a sense of total helplessness in the face of decisions by the government and corporations. People here feel abandoned, looked down upon, as toxic waste from all over the country is brought here for disposal. Cancer rates and respiratory problems here are not just dry statistics on paper. They are a present pain in every family. When you pass through East Liverpool, you see sad streets lying in the shadow of giant smokestacks, where the air often smells strongly of metal. People hate this place because of environmental injustice, where the poorest people have to bear the heaviest consequences of industrialization. East Liverpool is a testament to how a city can be squeezed dry and then left in pollution. The hatred here is not just about the degraded landscape, but about a lost faith in the protection of the law. But wait, this environmental pollution isn't even the scariest thing that can gnaw at a community. Because at position number 3, we enter a place where the crisis isn't just in the air. It has seeped deep into every vein of society in the most literal sense. Top 3, Portsmouth, the endless cycle of drugs and utter despair. If there is a place whose name has become synonymous with one of the worst public health crises in modern history, it is Portsmouth. This town is nestled beside the poetic Ohio River. But don't let the peaceful water fool you, because Portsmouth is the epicenter of the opioid epidemic that has wiped out an entire generation in this state. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to live in a place where drug overdose deaths happen so frequently that people are no longer surprised to hear ambulances wailing every night? Portsmouth is hated because it brings a thick sense of despair, a gloom that no sunlight can penetrate. People hate this place because they see an inescapable cycle of self-destruction. Economic collapse leads to poverty. Poverty leads to drugs, and drugs continue to crush the last hopes of an economic recovery. The decay in Portsmouth is not just visible in the old Victorian buildings slowly rotting over time. It is present in the eyes of the residents who are holding on. With a poverty rate of nearly 40%, Portsmouth is like a ship slowly sinking, while all efforts to bail out water seem futile. What makes people most outraged and hateful toward this place is the expansion of pill mills, disguised clinics that funneled millions of addictive painkillers onto the streets for decades. Can you imagine a small town with a painkiller consumption rate dozens of times higher than major metropolises? It was the rot from within the healthcare system and the indifference of the government for a long time that turned Portsmouth into a dangerous land. Every street corner, every park here carries the breath of loss. Ohioans hate Portsmouth because it is a painful reminder of how a community can be gnawed to the bone by social evils. But can the pain of Portsmouth compare to the total collapse of a place where even the skeleton of management has completely disintegrated? Prepare yourself, because at position number 2, we enter a place where the line between a city and a war ruin is just a thin thread. Top 2, East Cleveland, the skeleton of a metropolis disintegrating in chaos. Welcome to East Cleveland, where the concept of urban decay reaches the most extreme level you can imagine. This is not an ordinary poor city, but an entity disintegrating right before our eyes. Once a magnificent suburb where Gilded Age millionaires built grand mansions along Euclid Avenue, East Cleveland is now hated because it brings a sense of total lawlessness and collapse. Have you ever driven through a city where you feel like you've wandered into the set of a post-apocalyptic movie, where traffic lights no longer work? Roads are so ruined that cars must swerve as if driving through a minefield, and massive piles of trash are illegally dumped right in the middle of the sidewalk with no one to clean them up? That is the East Cleveland of today. The hatred aimed at East Cleveland comes from outrage at a paralyzed and corrupt government apparatus. It is the only city in Ohio placed under direct state financial oversight because it can no longer afford the most basic services. What do you think when the police and fire departments here have to work with equipment so old it's unsafe? While high-ranking officials are constantly involved in profiteering scandals, Ohioans hate this place because they see a terrible waste of history and the utter helplessness of humans in maintaining social order. The violent crime rate here is terrifyingly high, causing East Cleveland to frequently land on lists of the most dangerous places in America. But what truly makes people shudder at the mention of this city's name is not just the poverty, but the sense of an exodus. East Cleveland's population has dropped by more than half in a few decades, leaving rows of abandoned houses standing side by side like white skeletons in the evening sun. The hatred here carries the shade of disgust at a total failure. However, if the physical ruin of East Cleveland makes your skin crawl, Position number 1, the name at the top of Ohio's most hated list, is a perfect twist. It's not poor, it's not dangerous, but it is a sophisticated pickpocketing machine that makes anyone passing through grit their teeth in anger. Top 1, New Miami, the perfect trap and the utter rage of drivers. We have traveled through cities devastated by drugs, urban ruins like post-apocalyptic settings, and lands poisoned by chemicals. But there is a strange truth. The place at the top of the most hated list in the state of Ohio is not a life-threatening place, nor is it a den of violent crime. Welcome to New Miami, a tiny village with a population of just over 2,000, yet it possesses a power that makes tens of thousands of drivers across America grit their teeth in fury. Why would a tiny, peaceful-looking spot by the highway be able to surpass East Cleveland or Portsmouth to claim the crown of hatred? The answer lies in something called legal exploitation, a sophisticated trap set up not to protect safety, but to pickpocket anyone who happens to glide through. Imagine you are driving on Highway 127, your mind drifting to a song on the radio, and you pass through New Miami. You don't see police on the side of the road, no warning lights. Everything seems perfectly calm. But just a few weeks later, an envelope appears in your mailbox with a heavy fine. That's when you realize you've become the next victim of the automated speed camera system, a technological monster that New Miami operated to turn the road passing through the village into a literal money printing machine. People hate New Miami not because of decay, they hate it because of the feeling of being hunted by an invisible entity. Do you feel angry knowing that in less than 2 years, this tiny village raked in nearly $2 million in fines from the pockets of ordinary working people? Whenever New Miami is mentioned, Ohioans don't think of a friendly community, they think of a forced toll station. You can feel the electricity of anger on online forums, where people share ways to avoid the road through the village or warn each other to stare at the speedometer as if facing a dangerous enemy. That is the pinnacle of hatred, when a place is no longer a place to live or to visit, but becomes a black spot on the map that everyone wants to erase. New Miami stands at number 1 because it represents a modern kind of injury, where trust and fairness is crushed by algorithms and cold fine notices. And so we have completed our journey through the 10 coordinates that bring the most conflicting emotions in the state of Ohio, from the haunting ghosts in the old psychiatric hospitals in Athens, the painful collapse of the industrial empire in Youngstown, to the sophisticated financial trap we just witnessed in New Miami. Ohio is not just a land of cornfields. It is a mosaic pieced together from harsh lives, mistakes of the past, and fragile hopes for change. If you found this video interesting and want to explore other hidden corners of the world, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the production team. Your companionship is the greatest motivation for us to continue digging deep and bringing you the highest quality storytelling. Thank you for following this journey from beginning to end. For now, drive carefully, keep your eyes peeled, and never forget to check your speedometer when passing through small towns. See you in the next journeys.